This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, we're taking a trip to the less distant past. We go to the distant past. This is slightly less distant. We don't have to travel as far as we're talking about a 2000s album.
It's further than it feels.
Yeah, you don't want to really admit that this is 20 years ago.
Yeah, this feels like yesterday.
This does feel like yesterday. Because this album that we're going to talk about came out in 2005. So this is the 20th year of this album.
That's
which
wild.
When we started this podcast, we couldn't even do 20-year anniversaries for album released in the 90s. We could do 10 years. Oh, fun.
Yeah.
But we had a poll, Jay. 4 albums were suggested over at our Discord. That's where, if you want to get in on the 2000s action, that sweet 2000s action, you got to go to Patreon, become a member, and join the Discord, because that's where it gets done. 4 albums suggested by 4 people from our community, all from the 2000s. Here we go. This is what we had. Keith Tasker suggested Kill 'Em With Kindness by The Jealous Sound from 2003. Darren Lehman suggested Happy in Galoshes by Scott Weiland from 2008. Patrick Testa suggested Super Taranta from Gogol Bordello.
I think it's Go-Go.
Gogol in 2007.
I think it's just Go-Go.
Okay. Okay. And then Darren Leach suggested A Certain Trigger by Maximo Park from 2005.
This one has an umlaut, though.
Yeah. So is it Maximo? I don't know how to... How do you do an umlaut over an I?
I don't know.
I'm not even quite sure what
Molly
the umlaut
Crow
does, to be honest. I feel like it's just a decoration. It's not really something that I ever pay attention to.
The Germans would disagree, but I'm not sure. Is this band German?
No.
Okay.
Most of their influences are German.
Yeah.
So the winner, with 42% of the total vote between Patreon and digmeoutpodcast.com, after we tabulated those two, beep, boop, boop, we got 42%. A Certain Trigger by Maximo Park came in first. Kill 'Em With Kindness by The Jealous Sound, 31%. Scott Weiland with 50%, and Gogo Bordello with 12%. So, Jay, let me ask you, had you ever listened to Maximo Park?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. I was into a lot of the adjacent bands, so Futureheads and or some of the others.
Bloc Party.
Yeah.
Franz Ferdinand.
The whole what do we
Kaiser
call it?
Chiefs.
Dance rock.
Yeah.
Has maybe a new wave approach. So I'm sure I checked this out. I was into a lot of those bands.
I didn't. I'd never listened to this band before. I don't know how I missed them, because I had heard the name, and there are a lot of bands from that era that I listened, like we just mentioned, Franz Ferdinand. I have multiple albums of theirs. The Futureheads, I love their debut album. Art Brute, Bloc Party, Editors, Kaiser Chiefs. There's so many.
Yeah.
And like you said, there was like a dance punk new wave thing happening, not just in the UK. There was also US bands that were doing it, like the Bravery and who else was that? I don't remember. But anyway, there were a lot of bands that were reaching back into like late 70s, early 80s, new wave, post-punk, getting those dance rhythms and a little more, I guess you'd say jittery is the word.
Yeah.
Especially
Staccato.
Futureheads. Futureheads blow my mind sometimes when I listen to their music because it's just so wildly disjointed and somehow comes together. I'm like, are they even all playing the same song and they just kind of guessed what each other's doing? Because it's amazing that they actually all link together. Anyway, the album we're talking about, Certain Trigger, came out in May of 2005 on Warp Records, which is weird because Warp Records is an electronic dance label, like Square Pusher and like those bands. So I don't know how they ended up with them.
Yeah.
This album was produced by Paul Epworth, who has worked with a lot of big artists. Besides Maximo Park, he's produced Adele, Rihanna, Florence and the Machine. Like that's crazy. That is quite the like I think he runs an indie label too, which has a bunch of big bands on it. So this is their debut. They're coming out of Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. They had been together since 2000 and they put out a couple of singles before then. But it took 5 years from the band starting to them actually putting out their first record. And they've continued to put out records. They put out an album last year. So they're still together.
Okay.
They really haven't had a break. Like they haven't separated.
My impression was a lot of the bands from that era or that we just mentioned had fizzled out.
Yeah, most of them have. That's the interesting thing. Bloc Party has tried to get back together, but those albums have not stood up compared to their earlier stuff. And I haven't kept up with anything else, but they have not been as interesting, I guess. They've had some touring musicians. People have been in and out of the band. Paul Smith is the lead vocalist. And they don't have a bass player technically in the band, I guess. Or maybe they do, but not right now. So the current lineup is Paul Smith, lead vocals, Duncan Lloyd on guitar, backing vocals, keyboards, piano, bass.
Jesus.
Dude, that's why you need touring musicians. So all the stuff you lay down in the studio, somebody else can play. And then Tom English on drums. Now, Tom English has been with the band along with Paul Smith or Duncan Lloyd since the beginning. Duncan Lloyd was the original lead singer, and then Paul Smith took over. That was before they even recorded the album.
Oh, okay.
Andrew Lothar has played bass in the band. Archie's Tiku was also a vocalist in the band, and then he moved to bass. So there was a bassist at one point. They've also had a keyboard player, and then Paul Rafferty played bass for a time, and Katie Trigger played bass for a time as a touring musician. Same with Rafferty as a touring musician. So it seems like bass is the one position that they've had a little trouble. Guys, I'm here if you need me. Just let you know I do play bass. I have to play with a pick, and it'll take me a little while to learn all the songs. But if you can tour, give me a shout out. So I mentioned last year, Stream of Life they put out. That was their 8th album. Yeah, they put out 8 albums between 2005 and 2024. So that's not bad. That's like every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Let's get into the comments from over at Patreon. What do the people have to say? Darren Lehman said, he predicted Weiland, so that his comments were about Weiland. Kyle Bittner said, I have and always will love that Maximo Park album. The vocals are great and work well with the spastic guitar work. Apply Some Pressure might have been the breakthrough single, but Acrobat is the true standout for me. Keith Tasker, he suggested Knapsack, so that's what he commented on. Willie Dillon said, I want to like the Jealous Sound because I absolutely love Knapsack, but I find it too smoothed over and produced sounding. It's not bad though. I listened to the Maximo Park song that was linked, but it didn't do too much for me. I love STP, but I have never really gotten the Scott Solo stuff. Gogo Bordello sounded pretty interesting though, so that's what I voted for. So process of elimination for Willie. He went through everything. And Gavin said, as much as I'd like to hear Jay and Tim review Gogo Bordello as a fun episode, I'll take Maximum Park as an example of the dance beat-based English rock of the early 2000s. Jilla's sound was too FM pop for me, and Weiland has been done. Plus, I didn't like this album. I've never listened to that Scott Weiland album, Happy in Galoshes.
I just remember that time him being so controversial that I lost interest.
Yeah.
Seems like he was constantly falling off the wagon and getting arrested, and I just was exhausted by it all.
So this did go this sold over 500,000 copies in the UK, and it was nominated for the Mercury Prize, which is sort of like their best album Grammy, I guess you'd say. There were 5 singles released. It peaked at number 15 on the UK albums chart and number 1 on the independent albums chart. Interesting. So this came out in 2005, but they were putting out singles. So the first single, The Coast Is Always Changing, came out in November of 2004 as like the preview for the record. And then Apply Some Pressure was the second single, was released in February of 2005. The album, then the third single, Graffiti, was released in May of 2005. So they released 3 singles before the album even came out. Which, does that really happen anymore? I mean, I guess some bands do that, but
probably now, but in 2005, that seems very strange.
Yeah. And then Going Missing was released in July of 2005. Apply Some Pressure was re-released as a single in October 2005. And I Want You to Stay was released in February of 2006. So about a year and a half of singles from this band, from this album. And there was a bonus disc you could get with some of the copies. I'm guessing this was a CD album that had a Live in Tokyo. Tokyo, not a Tokyo Dome, but Live in Tokyo bonus album that came with it. So let's get into talking about A Certain Trigger by Maximo Park. Jay, what works for you on this record?
I was really taken by the sound of the album. So, you know, with this type of music, I would describe it as maybe from the jam school. Very staccato, very percussive, high energy, sharp, little angular. To pull that off, you know, I think it's a really good idea to go with a production like this that's very dry. There's not very much reverb going on here, delay. It really jumps out of the speakers. So all these drum hits and you know, guitar, you know, it's kind of like stabbing guitars, and even the bass really erupts out of the speakers at you. It also, in that mix, does a really interesting job of, you know, letting the keyboards kind of intermingle and play different roles, which I think helps, you know, shape the mood of a lot of these songs. You know, right out of the gate, that first track, the way that the Signal and Sign, the way that those keyboards fit in there are very interesting.
Well, I've been waiting here for hours. It's getting cold. Position closed. A new direction. A new dawn. Consider this my formal complaint. I hope you felt cheated at home with all your lies, 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 lies. How long has it taken for you to look so fine, 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 fine? Don't waste your life. Just go outside.
rhythmic part that also has some melody, and it is very separated from the mix. It's like really kind of in your face, but you can really hear every single thing. It also lets the keyboard just play with a lot of different sounds throughout the record. So there's stuff that sounds like 80s analog synth. There's stuff that's like more accordion. They do some stuff that's bells, like there's some Mellotron sounding things, organ. But the format of the band is always this really tight, high energy, kind of punchy staccato delivery. So the keyboards can kind of play different roles. It could move from, like in a song like I Want You to Stay, it's really doing this growly kind of bass mirroring, where it's kind of playing the same thing as the bass does for certain parts, and then all of a sudden it jumps out and it does this arpeggio that becomes the highlight of the section, and the song takes on this whole other feel. So I think it's just really clever how kind of the keyboards are weaved in there, and they can fall back and be rhythmic, but then they can also really come forward and jump out, and taking a lot of different tones and sounds to help make this, do some stuff that maybe the Jam couldn't do, in their day, with the sort of the palette you have of the keyboard. I think what's at the core of that works really well is I think the bass and the drums are really cool. It's kind of surprising to hear they don't have a bass player anymore, because there's like some John Entwistle type stuff going on here, some runs and some. I think he's playing with his fingers, so you get a lot of like really like grabbing those strings and like hearing the notes kind of pop and bust out of the mix. Even cause some distortion in the mix. It's everything on here is really recorded hot. So you kind of get those moments like in a Who song where it's like, I don't know, where you hear this bass run or something that really grabs your attention, and it reminds you like, oh yeah, there's people performing here, and pulls you into what the bass line's doing when that happens. So, that's some of the stuff that I was drawn to. It was fun to go back to this era and kind of pull apart and appreciate, how these bands were recorded, and how this music's put together that's fairly complex, almost prog level compositions, but in 2 and 3 minute long pop songs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what worked for me. How about you?
Well, like I said earlier, I was a huge fan of that debut Futureheads record. I think it's fantastic. I also like the first 2 Bloc Party records. So the fact that I missed this is, I should apologize, because this forgiven. Is really good. Like you nailed it. Like the Jam with sort of the New York new wave scene of like Talking Heads and Blondie, and then maybe like some Gang of Four in there. I mean, it's just such a, and it is itself too, because they use so many interesting sounds, little keyboard sounds here and there, piano, but it's done in a very unexpected way. You get so much choppy, angular guitar stuff's happening. I don't know how to really describe what people say when they say angular. It's just one of those things where it when you hear it.
Yeah.
Because to the average person, you say that's a very angular guitar, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like the shape of the guitar. Yeah, I'm like, no.
Like, there's a tension.
Yes.
There's a dissonance and a tension, as opposed to being smooth and melodic.
It sounds jumpy, is what I would say. Like it doesn't sound like when you listen to a lot of 90s alternative rock, you can hear the natural progression from one power chord to the next. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. You hear, and that's throughout dozens and dozens of big hit singles from the 90s. And I think what's so interesting is how many bands just completely abandoned that at the start of the 2000s that we've mentioned, and started really honing in on a very specific style of post-punk new wave. There was stuff here that reminded me in the quieter moments, because the faster moments reminded, like I was definitely hitting like the Jam and some of the other bands. But then there was stuff that reminded me, especially in his lyrics, they can be self-deprecating at times. That reminded me of like Elvis Costello and even some Smiths stuff, just in terms of just in terms of the Britishness, I guess, of it. And he's also singing. He's not trying to Americanize his voice. Like you clearly hear him having an accent, which makes it, I think, even more interesting because it doesn't sound bland. You're getting a very specific sound with the way he sings. I'm not sure how to describe it because it's more than just British. Like it's from a particular area that I probably should know where Newcastle upon Tyne is. It's in Tyne and Wear, obviously.
It doesn't sound like he's from Columbus, Ohio. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, let's put it that way. So, I loved the sound of the band, and I love the energy of this record. It fits in so well with those bands that I mentioned earlier. It's the kind of thing where, depending on there's a really big difference if you listen to it just on speakers and then you throw headphones on, you're like, oh, there's all sorts of stuff bouncing around in there. So you could tell they had a good producer because he definitely like took what they were doing and recorded it really well. Everything is clear. You can hear all the weird keyboard stuff. You can hear the drums and the bass doing wild things throughout it and staying in this weird jigsaw of a sound. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's very I mean, I don't know why we haven't really gone back to that. Like,
I know
if anything, we've gone back to like the more smoother chord progressions, and people have embraced shoegaze and people have embraced some grunge sounds. But like, I would love to hear some bands playing with a little more angular, jumpy, spastic rhythms and guitar playing. That to me is interesting because when it's done really well, it's something you want to listen to over and over again, especially because they keep the songs tight. Can't help but mention that I don't think there's one 4-minute song on here, and it's at the back end of the record. All these songs are 2 to 3 minutes, which is awesome. That's how this band should sound. You should go boom, next song, boom, next song, boom, next song, tear through it. I mean, it's a 13-song album released in 2005, and it's 39 minutes.
Yeah,
which is bonkers.
It's very efficient.
So that's some of the stuff that worked for me. Anything not work for you on this record?
Yeah, it's there's something about it that kept me at an arm's length. Like I said, it feels like they're jumping out of the speakers at you. And I guess what I wanted is some moments where they pulled me into the speakers with them. And I was trying to, spend some time figuring out why. There's a lot of information here. They're putting a lot into 3-minute songs, which means there's not a lot of time to do like transitions. So all the changes are very abrupt. I mean, they're on the one. They're just like, there's no, run into it. There's no build up. There's no transition part. It's like, boom, next part, boom, next part, boom, next part. And I found that combined with the tempos and just how compact it was to be a little I don't know, I don't want to say disjointed, but like difficult. Like I said, in its pieces, I like everything that's going on here. There's just something about it doesn't give me a moment to kind of draw me in or it doesn't really breathe a whole lot. And I think there's just a lot to process on this record, and which is an interesting to say for a song, for, an album that's mostly songs that are 3 minutes long, that are obviously like pop oriented. So yeah, I just felt myself not being able to like emotionally connect with the record as much as I wanted to. And those are maybe some of the reasons. I also started to notice that the vocal follows the guitar a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of get, because if they were doing different things, maybe that would be too much to process. But it also means like the vocal is very active because these guitar lines are active. So I found myself like the parts I was really enjoying is where the guitar's actually simplified a little bit. I think it was more like, okay, there's a intro riff and a cool part, and then they would simplify so you could sing over them, and it would build some momentum and sort of let me get into the song versus, a lot of the other material where it's riff after riff after riff, and all the riffs he's singing the same melody as the riff. So it's just like a lot of melody to process, because these are not like 4 chord riffs. These are like melodic lines, and very staccato and very like rhythmic oriented. And then the vocal is very rhythmic oriented. So that might have been part of it too. So that's some of what didn't work for me. How about you?
It's a lot to process, and like you said, it's such a jarring experience that I think the thing that they're missing is those sections where the melody takes over, which is what I think I connected with those other bands. Like,
Yeah.
When you think of like Decent Days and Nights by the Futureheads, I mean, they're stacking melodies and harmonies on top of each other. Everybody in that band sings. And when you look at a band like Bloc Party, you have a really excellent guitarist, and that is not doing the same thing as the vocalist.
Yeah.
So like you, I noticed a lot of times when, he's just singing the guitar melody. Like, yeah. I think I just needed a little bit more diversification in that department, and a little bit more hookiness. The songs are catchy in the sense that like they have like cool repetitive guitar parts and rhythms, and even some lines here and there, but I didn't find myself remembering a song in its entirety. And quite honestly, sometimes I was confused as to which song I was on, because there's so much choppiness that I'm like, this could be the verse of one song or the chorus of another song.
Yep.
That was really my only complaint. And that might have been, I got this, I know this got good reviews at the time. And it seems to have only like maintained its status. But when I was mentally comparing it to some of the other bands I listened to, I was like, this is good. But if I had heard, Apply Some Pressure or I Want You to Stay on an MP3 blog in 2005, I probably would have been like, oh, this is cool, and maybe checked out an EP or something like that. But I don't know that this album would have stuck with me the way that those other bands did, and where I'm still listening to those artists and those bands.
Moonlight, please hold me now till my breath runs out. There are many things that I am not, but there's one thing that I can't deny. A double bluff, you fed me lines, the shot is cut, you're searching for a mesh of tones, surround your eyes. I wish I knew how it came to this. I always said you could rely on me. Now it seems that I was wrong. I want you to stay. I want you to stay with me. 'Cause nothing works round here, where cranes collect the sky.
I don't know that this one has staying power with me, because in retrospect now, I go, oh, well, this just sounds like a lot of those other bands that I already like, and they're not doing anything better than those bands. I mean, they're doing some interesting things, Excuse me. But I don't know that they're doing anything outrageously better or more inventive than any of those bands. I'd be curious to know what they sound like as they evolved. Like, what does
Yeah.
this band sound like in 2024? Are they still, angular and spastic, doing dance rhythms and weird keyboard parts, or have they like completely changed that sound around? So that's what didn't work for me. It's strange. It's a strange space because I enjoyed just like having it on. This is another example of like as a passive listen, it was fine, but when I had to like dig in and like put the headphones on and listen to tracks, I was a bit more put off.
Yeah.
So, and it
Yeah.
sounds like that's kind of the same.
I'm with you.
Experience.
I was lost in the record for it only being 39 minutes. I mean, I couldn't tell you at any moment where I was in it. It was just like, oh yeah, the National
Yeah,
Park record's on. And I did not walk away singing any of these songs in my head. So for it only being 39 minutes, that's surprising.
yeah,
You know, I can only, right. I can only attribute that to just it. It's almost like you could cut apart all the different parts in this song and mix them up with any other song, and they would still all make good songs, or they would still all make songs. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like you could just take them all and like chop that part, chop that part, chop that part for the entire album, and then just randomize the whole thing, and it would probably make songs that wouldn't sound that different than the ones that are on the record. It's like a bunch of parts all put together, um, that are all really cool parts. It just makes for, I think, at least for me, I wasn't able to really grasp like, oh yeah, this is that song, and it starts this way, and then we go here, and then we end here, and there's this hook that's going to come. Over repeated listens, like, oh yeah, I remember that part, and that part's cool, but like, I
mm-hmm.
don't remember that part as being part of that song. It's all just a big mix of stuff.
Yeah. And I don't know that any of those bands had a huge impact in the US. I know this did very well in the UK and other places, but I don't remember reading about it. Maybe it was in like Big Takeover and it might have made it into Spin or something like that. But I don't think that this is a band without having a killer single that would cross over here the way that some of the dance stuff did. Like I feel like Editors like even did better here.
Yeah.
Like that was a more radio friendly sound.
Yeah.
Um it still had that dance element, but it was a little bit more streamlined. And it also isn't like when I think of the Kaiser Chiefs, that I Predict a Riot song, like it's kind of a goofy song, but it's a good hook.
Yeah, they beat that hook in your head.
Yes. And
They
there's
don't do that
nothing
on
here like
There's
that.
no here where they're like, this is the hook. We're gonna hit you with it and hit you with it. Um, I think there's hooks in here, but they're mixed among 5,000 other parts. And
Yes.
they're fleeting. They're like, oh yeah, that's a hook, and then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh wait, that was cool. Oh, wait. So
Yeah.
there's almost too many ideas here.
It
I
is.
guess is another way to think about it.
It's a little overstuffed for 39 minutes, which is a weird thing to
We
say.
never say that.
No.
And it's
That,
not like I think we're also like you could hear this description of it and think like, oh, this is like a super difficult listen in that it's not. I think it's accessible. Like you could play it for most people and they'd be like, you know, 30 seconds be like, oh yeah, that's okay. That's fine enough. They wouldn't be like running out of the room. But in, context of 40 minutes of it, it's a different experience.
yeah. Yes, exactly. So where are you gonna land on this one, Jay? This is a tough one. Is it a worthy
Yeah.
album, a better EP, or a decent single?
I think this, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say, I haven't heard the rest of the catalog, but this feels like an EP band to me. Like they're are some great ideas here. And I think if it was, half of this amount of material, I would process it very differently, and be able to absorb it. And it doesn't have anything to do with the overall length. It's just the amount of information that's in each one of these songs. I get lost in like where the individual songs are. And I think I would pick that up better in an EP. And then I would be able to like cherry pick the songs that I think work best, which is like Signal and Sign. I think that opener, I was super excited when I put this on and that opener starts. I'm like, damn, this is really cool. I'm going to dig this album. Apply Some Pressure, Graffiti. I think Postcard of a Painting is a good switch for them. It almost has more of a Cure feel to me.
Yeah,
it's
very early
brighter.
Cure. Yeah.
More than I'll ever have, I'm losing. More than I'll ever give, I'm losing. More than I'll ever have, I'm losing. More than I'll ever give to you. Picture me with you, but you couldn't do it. Everything I said was true, but I couldn't prove it. Your eyes are big when they're so close. Why can't we say goodbye in public? Your eyes are big when they're so close. Why can't we say goodbye in public? Picture me with you, but you couldn't do it. Everything I said was true, but I couldn't prove it. And I admit that there's a web.
Going Missing, I Want You to Stay, and then The Coast Is Always Changing. So it's really for me front heavy. I don't know if that's like fatigue setting in or not, but like the second half of the album felt even more either like to me Acrobat is kind of experimental. I didn't really get that in the context of the rest of the album. And then the other songs in the second half are even less hooky and more spastic sounding to me. So I lean towards the first 6 songs, and then The Coast Is Always Changing would be my EP. 7 songs. Where you at?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a front loaded, because that's where all the singles are too. And all the songs they pick for singles are good songs, but they're all in the first half. So that's what I'm going to go with. Like basically the same as stuff as you. I don't understand that Acrobat song. It does not fit on here in what is a pretty tightly constructed album.
It's really strange to not end on it, because they come back with Kiss You Better, which is more like the rest of the album. And I'm like, yeah, I'm lost. Where are we going, guys?
Either do that last or make it a B-side.
Yeah.
And this band had a lot of B-sides. Their next release was just a compilation album of B-sides and demos, because they had 4 singles, and it's the UK, so they had lots of B-sides for those singles.
Between the singles you said they released and then that, it sounds like they just had so many ideas, like an incredible amount of ideas.
So that's 2 better EPs for A Certain Trigger by Maximo Park. If anyone wants to explain how the umlauts are utilized, please feel free to do so in comments. If this episode brought back good memories and positive vibes, join us at digmeoutpodcast.com to explore our free archive of over 800 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. Want more? Paid subscribers unlock bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.